Hello, and welcome to another episode of my Stars Let's Play. I hope you folks are well, taking care of each other and being kind to yourselves. Bloody stupid freaking cheap ass desk. Better one, but basement where there's tons of mold. Vagaries of having to change one's housing situation in a relative hurry because someone with long COVID, disabled long COVID, by the way. Those new to my channel, welcome. I'm disabled with long COVID. And yeah, anyways, as someone disabled with long COVID, kept marginalized with very little ability to survive because there's no real effort to make it easier for people with long COVID to have very low energy to say, get disability stuff. The very low energy means that when you take a system that's known to be intimidating and excessive amounts of work, and people like me often, many weeks, have trouble just taking care of the most basic necessities. There's been some improvement since the first years. Well, no, about 2 or 3 years in, I hit a immune exhaustion phase. My long COVID got worse, but there's been some improvement since then. Made worse by reinfection not long after that, so it got worse around 2 or 3 years again. I think it got worse by reinfection. I think that was after. It may have been before. And then it's been steady improvement, but then the next time you get infected with coronavirus again, it'll just get worse. So there's no escaping long COVID, really, because even if you get better, the next time you get the virus again, you'll just end up back where you were. But at least I'm not one of those people who's so sick they can't get out of bed. But, given the very low energy, there should be help for people with long COVID to, get disability, to move through the process. That I asked for accommodations, including extra time and deadlines, which they no, and extra calls, reminders and stuff, which the fuckers at the Social Security office did. The local one that was shit where I lived at the time. There's a better one here, but they did by calling me when they needed something 2-3 times, all in a 5-minute period, and considering that to be multiple calls. No. Extra reminders means you call, and if you can't reach me, you're called back the next day, because I might even forget to return the call because of my long COVID and how it makes me kind of airheaded. And they've dragged out the process and made it just as difficult as anticipated it would be. So when I was just wrapping my head around the fact that my whole future was screwed up, I was on the verge of becoming a physician and having to reacclimate to very, very different prospects for the future, barely being able to avoid being homeless, hopefully. And even that's not guaranteed. Obviously, fighting through a system that's designed to fuck people over and make it hard for them to get help, because it's not the bureaucrats who do it, by the way. It's the politicians and the top-level ministers who are evil pieces of shit who design welfare systems to be as bureaucratic and hard to get received as possible. This is partly due to Ronald Reagan, which reminds me of something I really wanted to say before I get into this game. While I take a moment to reacclimate myself with what the hell I was up to. Looks like I was getting ready to eventually do another Genesis arc. Still building some star bases. Yep, there's that. I might need actually this. So I don't spend hours on new star base and actually delay the trade hub, which is why I'm building the star bases in the first place, is for more trade hubs. So 1987, so this was during Ronald Reagan's presidency. Reagan reminded me of this. Rudolf Hess died. If you're wondering why the heck I'm aware of this, first of all, I also play Hearts 4. Rudolf Hess was a prominent Nazi. He was Adolf Hitler's best friend. He was in Spandau prison. He was eventually the last prisoner there because others were released, which they shouldn't have been. They should have been kept in for life. Uh, the U.S. multiple times tried to get Hess released, but the Soviets absolutely refused to see him released because of his symbolic importance. Uh, Claiming he was harmless, which is bullshit. When he was the number two man in the Third Reich, he was absolutely not harmless, and he had immense symbolic importance, even once he was too old and frail to actually do much. Possibly, even at 100, he ended up living to 103 because these cockroaches always live forever. Even at the age of 100, he may still have been able to like work behind the scenes to strengthen fascist movements if he had been released from prison. He wasn't senile. He was just hard of hearing, hard of sight, and physically frail. And eventually, 103, he killed himself. He strangled himself with a garden hose, rubber garden hose. Some question of whether maybe like something like a Soviet agent slipped in and did it. It's ridiculous the guy lived that long. He's 103, and the U.S. kept trying to get him released on quote humanitarian grounds, which is bullshit because this is at the same time the U.S. was keeping millions of nonviolent drug offenders in prison and forcing them into slave labor because you can still do slavery in the U.S. if someone's a prisoner. It's the one exemption to the ban on slavery. And what was it? Which amendment? It doesn't matter. It's an exemption, which is ridiculous. So, millions of nonviolent drug offenders are being kept in prison forced to forced labor, but the U.S. was trying to get this guy out of prison all himself because he's the last prisoner, and he was being basically pampered and watched over very carefully and taken on walks through a garden, which is essentially his personal garden at that point, since there were no other prisoners, on a daily basis. Released that guy on humanitarian grounds, a Nazi, and not the nonviolent drug offenders being forced to do slave labor every day. It was ridiculous, and it was bullshit. And if there's any question, there were still a lot of Nazi sympathizers in the U.S. in the 1980s. There was a plethora of news articles basically praising the guy or saying he wasn't actually that dangerous, including in Time magazine, which I thought the fact that they named Adolf Hitler Man of the Year at one point was maybe just a fluke. But since they also wrote an article basically trying to argue Hess was harmless, even in the same breath as they admitted he was Hitler's best friend, that's bullshit. It's maybe there aren't so many Nazi sympathizers around today, but in the 1980s, there absolutely were in the U.S. And this inspired a song, which is part of what got remind me of this, by Chumbawamba, I think. It's the band that did Tub Thumping. They're so-called one-hit wonder, but they did all these albums. That was just the one that never made it big. I Get Knocked Down, I Get Up Again. That's their one song that made it big. They did a little ditty called The Day the Nazi Died about Hess dying, and all these people attending his funeral. It was like a huge attendance, and people were praising him. And he was a literal second commander of the Third Reich. So, arguing in the song, which the historical evidence is pretty clear, that there's still a lot of Nazi sympathizers throughout Europe, but there also were in the U.S. based on some of the news articles coming out. And we see these people reemerging. People might have denied that and said, "Oh, this isn't really true," and you're just looking back in the '80s with a different eye and standards of the times. Except now we had Trump and we had the fucking Nazi rally in Charlottesville and we had both sides crap, and now we have literal white supremacists speaking publicly in Trump's second term. It's the Nazis never went away; they just went underground, and now they're back again. Or fascists, because I've said this before. Trump supporters aren't Nazis; they're fascists. They're more in the vein of Mussolini than Hitler. People just don't know enough history to even know what Mussolini did, so they automatically see here fascists and think Hitler because they're not aware of the Spanish fascists, the Italian fascists, the Romanian fascists, the Hungarian fascists, the Bulgarian fascists. By the way, all these countries except Spain actually joined the Axis powers willingly in World War II. And people have this claim, oh, the Soviets just conquered Eastern Europe in World War II. No, the Soviets were invaded by a genocidal regime that killed 4.5 million Soviet civilians. The Nazis carried out a genocide, a lesser one than the Holocaust, at the same time on Soviet civilians. Killed 4.5 million civilians. And their allies who joined in this invasion were Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, Italy, And Spain didn't actually join the Axis, but it allowed the Nazis to base U-boats in Spain under Franco. Um, there were collaborative regimes in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, although there were also ones that worked with the Soviets. Those countries are kind of split. Uh, Thankfully, very few Poles collaborated with the Nazis, but the Finns actually fought alongside them through the continuation war. And partly as a result of this, the Soviets helped restructure the Finnish government, and this is how Finland ended up a social democracy, the same as Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, was partly because of Soviet influence in pushing the Finnish government to the left, but not trying to turn into a communist country exactly. Well, I think they might have tried, but more being content with it becoming a social democracy. So at least it was sympathetic to socialism, even if it didn't become socialist. Sweden did actually try and reform itself into a fully socialist country. At one point, briefly, they toyed with it in the 70s, but then when it became obvious the Soviet Union was going to lose the Cold War, which became obvious already in the 70s, they abandoned the idea. So, yeah, the Nordic countries are always sympathetic to socialism, and Marxists were always a part of the coalitions of social democracy in the Nordic countries. It's how they got welfare systems that were so generous, is by social democrats working together with communists to create generous social welfare systems, strong labor, trade union rights, that kind of stuff. Oof, I need to restructure the not restructure, but redo this pattern of surveys here. Give me a sec. It's not super important, but needs doing. That might not be completely optimal, but it's better than what was there before. And then, uh, oh, they may not be able to survey that because that'll be outside my borders. Oop, that's definitely not good. All right. No, shoot. I wish I knew exactly how the braking of the ship would work. That, like, how quickly it would brake and stuff. That would tell me the optimal path here. Oop. Oh, I know. Damn it. Sorry. Yeah, so Hess was an old Nazi bastard, and he he offed himself eventually, but or was killed, and it was made to look like a suicide, which happens with politically important individuals all too often. When it's not like death by cop assassination, like Fred Hampton was murdered by the FBI in the 70s, late 70s, which, so not that far, less than 10 years before, the US was arguing it should release a Nazi on humanitarian grounds. It had the Chicago Police Department, FBI, had worked together to assassinate one of the leaders of the Black Panthers, still keeping millions of black people illegally in jail. Like, not technically it was the law that they were there, but they had not received fair trials. And, if they had been able to get fair appeals, the law would have ruled that they shouldn't have been in jail, many of them. And, excessive sentences and slave labor for prisoners. Yeah, the U.S. has come a long way, but it's now started backsliding, and there's still a long way to go. I mean, the story has been towards a more just society over time, in theory, until this century, where there's been backsliding and things are getting worse again. like Trump being part of that. And that's inevitable because capitalism will eventually destroy itself. You know, this backsliding was predictable. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Population is so short. Maybe at some point I will destroy one of these orders dimenses so I can do a Genesis preserve on Anchor that requires 2 districts, and then turn to a monument by uplifting the pre-sapiens Hijari, and then I can rebuild the orders dimenses. Some possibly worthwhile doing at some point. All right. That one's got a trade hub. Cool. How many allies do they have? Boom. 260. Probably can't even get that if I do them all my trade. Nope. Maybe next month. Alright. But yeah, in the song, The Day Nazis Died, there's this like, if you meet with these historians, they'll tell you what to say. Tell them that the Nazis never really went away. They're out there burning houses and spreading their racist lies. And then the last lyric I don't super like, although you can interpret it as a direct reference to what Hess did or something, or just to an ideology dying off and will never be at peace until every Nazi dies. I don't like that last lyric, but it's a little morbid and aggressive. Of course, this may just be my remaining liberal instincts, despite being a democratic socialist. Haven't been a liberal for a long time. This abhorring, even violent sounding song lyrics like that about literal Nazis. But yeah, so some will dislike it, and of course on YouTube I can't endorse that stuff even if I agreed with it, which I don't. This is not a deflecting. I think that song could have been worded just slightly softer and it would have caught on with a lot more people. Of course it was for punks. That's the audience that band, which punks are very, those sort of people who punch Nazis in the face. I actually had an EMT instructor who was a former punk at one time. He talked about fights that him and his punk friends used to get into with like neo-Nazis in the US, so they're clearly still around, or he wouldn't have been able to get in street brawls with them when he was younger. This was something he did decades ago. He had cleaned up his act since, so to speak, become more respectable. But punks don't give a shit, generally speaking. As in, like, dye their hair, mohawks. There's a certain group call themselves punk. They listen to punk rock, and they're strongly anti-Nazi, anti-fascist, and they don't give a shit about the legal system because they do recognize the legal system is biased in favor of the far right and will protect them and not the left. And they're correct about that, but then they try and take things in their own hands, which, when we get the legal system to crack down on them, it's self-defeating in the long run. Well, I say that, but many punks do manage to avoid too many consequences, so. But that's only because they're such a small marginal group, no one cares what they do. Forces. Honestly. Alright. Just inching closer so that Bubbles wouldn't be too far behind. Oh, she's in the fight now. She's got far more health than their ship, so I wanted her to tank a little for them. This should be the last fight. She'll have plenty of time to heal after. All this debris. At some point, I want to take care of this mining drone thing so I can claim Walmaro. I'll have to wait a little. Bengal is in the Mithrop system. Next month it can start an outpost, still have allies. And Sugimia, once I've surveyed it, which this ship will hopefully not stumble across Shishitoid hiding in the ice asteroids. that that's not a possibility. Oh yeah, anyways, I can get achievements again because one throne group, stratified society, just from having robots. I haven't yet swapped. I just want to swap this to social welfare very soon. I thought about doing decent conditions, but I'm not sure I want to be stuck there for 10 years. It's worth going all the way to social welfare. But currently I'm a little short consumer goods, and there's a period where, like, maybe for 5 years it'd be better to do decent conditions, but then for the next 5, social welfare would be better. So I'll just, I don't know, make a major investment in consumer goods production on a synth after this luxury residence, probably some civilian industries in these build slots. I may trade for consumer goods a little bit in the council here if I need to. Although they aren't as profitable trade for some of the other stuff they sell, it's still cheaper than buying the internal market, given trade value for consumer goods. So maybe I'll survey this multimodal too. I don't like passing up possible anomalies. Oop. Lost soul. Oh yeah, from robot. There, Charna. If I remember, I'm reasonably certain. I'm gonna swap these. Even higher anomaly discovery chance now. I'm pretty sure this has already been surveyed, so I can't find any anomalies here. It's just for experience. Whereas there's still anomalies to find, probably in Deneb and Stellaris and Orbagon. But yeah, I don't like passive anomalies. I like anomalies. I like big anomalies. I cannot. I like big butts. I cannot lie. That's all. Like big anomalies. I can't lie. Just, I'm being goofy. Silly. Shoot. That's more. I meant to have the enforcers become roboticists and anchor. And I totally forgot. Totally forgot about that. And yet I'm barely keeping ahead of what's going on with the crime rates. Why are they suddenly so high in anchor? I may actually need all these enforcers suddenly. Well. Oh. Alright. Won't be too long until I fill those last tech jobs and I'll have some civilians that can send anchor. Crime is that high. I actually do need all the enforcers. I don't know how it got so high, but here it's because these pops are going to have to remain specialists anyways, because they're going to briefly work as priests, so it's all good. All the assignments are what I want them to be. Or should be. Anchor, I don't know why it needs it, but I guess it does. You know, those enforcers. Okay. Battle debris. We have defeated the close forces encountered so far, but these engagements have raised a number of alarming questions. The Red Prophets should be have been deploying, not has been deploying, far more ships than they could possibly have built in secrecy on Hesek Prime. And now they pitted a large warship of an unknown design against us. That was actually the first group this spawned anyways. So I think this is the last I destroyed, so yeah. Where are these ships coming from? Are there more warships like the one we just destroyed? Yes, by the way. We should investigate the battle debris for answers. Oh. Combat computers, cutting lasers, fusion reactor, which also, by the way, make that a guaranteed research option. Ion thrusters. And this is the red prophet one. I basically need a science ship for both sets of debris. Sucks I only get combat computers in the red prophets. I think there was something else I could have gone earlier, but actually Tet. No, it's not a physics tech. I think it might have been in engineering. Nope. Guess that's all. They don't have any other techs, just one thing. Doing these projects does give experience to scientists, so better there's something than nothing, I suppose. Even if the techs are worth it. It's like 75 XP for each debris surveyed. Now the ships are damaged except Bubbles heals automatically. She is biological. Yeah, I don't think if I fought that pirate group, I'd probably lose most of my fleet, even if I won. It'd be incredibly expensive. So make sure everyone's based at Essex Station again and send them home. Reduce ship upkeep. Eventually build another shipyard at Merthrop, because it's located between two sets of colonizable worlds. The spiritualists me pissed when I do the Tomb World here. But I think it takes them like 20 years to forgive setting foot on a Tomb World. And that always starts expiring after either ban the colony, terraform out of Tomb World, or release the world, or somehow otherwise lose control of the system. Might not do it for a while, but someday. And I definitely want these, so point is I'll probably build a star shipyard at Mithrop. Or in Sejima, since I'm going to do these much earlier, Sejimia. But I probably won't do a crew quarters, so yeah, everything should return to Essex Station. And Bubbles has reduced upkeep in a nebula. I guess I was lucky that I started a nebula, even if it was a very small one, for that. Although I don't know if I'll get any more space amoebas. I don't know if I can produce space amoebas without one in a barium. I don't think Bubbles works. Or I can't clone her. I've even done the first contact technically. I don't think for space amoebas. I don't think she bought it. Okay. Still, so 7 pops, right? There's still 24 jobs. This is apparently the correct crime rate. Barely below 10%, which 10% can give crime events that can further increase crime and can lead to eventually like mob rule, which can kill governors. Even if the criminal numbers and the crime modifiers aren't nearly as high as they should be, they have been multiplied by 100. So they give like 1 criminal job instead of 100, i.e. it's insignificant. Assuming, of course, the criminal doesn't have the same output as 100 criminals, in which case it's almost as bad, just uses less labor. If that's the case. Kind of like Anchor doesn't have 100 war commanders, it always 1. Why is there a civilian? Oh. Because robots can't become squires. And this gets the buffs from the monument I built earlier. The robots on Anchor actually do produce Edict Fund and Unity Governing Ethics Attraction Amenities. Interesting. And the robots are technically under social welfare. I did take a look at that before. Doesn't actually cost me any consumer goods, but it actually does add to job efficiency for civilians. And it might cause them to produce, says civilians produce Unity, so I think more Unity as well. Which I guess is protecting the robots. They can't legally be arbitrarily disassembled by their owners, even though they're not sentient, which they're a valuable asset in the state, so I'm all in favor. And eventually they'll become semi-sentient with droids not yet sentient, but at least, you know, able to feel. Like an animal. Animals can feel even if they're not sentient. So that, you know, protect him from cruelty and gain the legal precedent in now instead of when it's desperately needed. Yeah, anyways. Cool. They probably actually had the pop growth from numbers, unless that was changed. As well. The robots. That being said, probably still more productive on a world where they can actually do something. So I might want to resell this robot. It's got a wet planet preference, which means 75% habitability in a wet planet type. Tech gives another 5%. There's a planetary feature. Oh wait, here it's 80%. 40 habitat, 40 feature. 5 from tech. 10% from buildings, I guess. Buildings. What the heck? I know this gives an extra 40% habitability that orders Excalibur. But what building is giving additional habitability? Oh, the Habitat Central Control. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, the robots being less habitable elsewhere, so they'd actually cost slightly more upkeep. Not saying what their upkeep is, but it should be. Wait a second. Do they have consumer goods upkeep? Robots might have consumer goods upkeep. That's, even though they don't have happiness. It says upkeep base 0. This implies they do. Whatever. Send the robot to go work. A synth, I guess, farming. Boom. They put it in the mines instead. I very much would have preferred on the farms. Is it less habitable than the other pops? No, it's going to insist on distributing them. Alright. His job's to fall in synth. These robots are eating upkeep. Let's see, no. Because this says upkeep and it says food. It says nothing for the robots, so I doubt. Should just be energy upkeep, but it doesn't even list that. Maybe it's just rounding. When I have more robots, I'll be able to see if they're costing consumer goods or not. Maybe a trade-off goods for Unity when there are civilians, but I'll eventually have those, so on Anchor, nowhere else. Periodically. Might be worth it if it's a tiny amount of consumer goods. I shall find out. Doesn't make sense though. Non-sentient robots that can't even. Maybe it's consumer goods they're like cleaning, so like the robots are being kept clean. It's like cleaning supplies. I guess that would make sense. Roleplay wise. See that? Let's get that outpost built. I'll slightly reduce my influence output because I'll no longer have 100% naval capacity coverage. But, drowning on influence. But I'll be adding a second reserve fleet for a little while. I really need to put alloys into star bases and Genesis arcs instead. Okay, we're done with that. Actually wanted to survey Orbagon 1. Way through there. Probably this way, because this dust cloud will block actually establishing contact. I won't be able to have the sensors see anything through it. So it's less optimal to explore that way. Boom. Boom. Hmm. 3, 2, or 9. It's doing 3, 2, 4. Might. How much faction do you have right now? Okay, yeah, no, social warfare isn't quite. If I ran priests. Huh, also. 420. Yeah, no, I don't actually smoke in pot. But I'm sure some of my viewers do, so. Yeah, deal. I don't do what you do, partly because of money, partly because I can't smoke anything without making my cough worse. And edibles are expensive as hell. And there's the legal system hasn't still fully legalized it yet on a federal level. But I don't look down on you, which I used to when I was younger, because stupid liberal, well, conservative upbringing, brain rot. Gone over that. Anyways, let's do social welfare now. This will add to the political power of my workers and specialists. Well, actually, the specialists will be happier now. I get to faction unity if I doubt it'll be enough to have this go down to 9 months next month instead of 10. But then if I re-enable priests for a little while here, I can probably just barely get resistance is frugal a month earlier. That's the idea. It won't update the unit until the month rolls over, but I think I get things coming from me. We'll see. Probably do with less enforcers now. The population should be happier. I'll update immediately. I'll run more squires just to be sure, but with more squires and higher living standards, you should probably see less crime. Higher living standards raises happiness, which is like a happiness that drives crime in the first place. Calculus on higher living standards is worthwhile is partly because you don't have to run as many enforcers, and partly because of faction unity. It's better to just put pops into artisan jobs than uni jobs. Uni jobs are very expensive and kind of inefficient. The number of build slots they take, if you put a price in those, you come out better off, especially since you probably already have some jobs, some planets dedicated to industry, not to uni. Just going super tall, super heavy into it, and you might have a uni planet. It's more efficient
Anomalous
usually.
readings registered.
Social warfare. Oh, so there were still anomalies to find around here. Interesting. Secret Heart. Resonance imaging of asteroids suggests an internal composition consisting of rare crystals. This is the ideal scientist to run it. Analyst, or sorry, scholar, which is faster anomaly research speed level 4. Investigate. Looking for anomalies here. Cool. Let's see what this drops to. Oh, it did drop all the way 9 months. Faction E went from 34 to 58. So I gained like 24 faction uni for 10 consumer goods. That's definitely a worthwhile trade-off. But that's partly incorporating the jump to decent standards, which is the one that's really cost-effective. Social warfare is very marginal over decent conditions unless you have unemployed pops or lots of civilians. Lots of unemployed pops or lots of civilians, but you do have some unemployed pops. I guess it's a capitalist economic system and it just generates. It doesn't say that they're producing unity. That was literally the old gimmick of social welfare. They have normal happiness. I guess they moved it to civilians. Actual unemployed pops don't produce unity anymore. Okay. Oh well. But at least they produce less crime. And lower stability less due to low happiness. In fact, now Hesek is almost 100% stability. Very close. Not quite max amenities anymore. Interesting. I briefly run more priests before I finish planetary unification. Well, it should be at max maze. Probably 100% stability on the Commonwealth for a little while. This still hasn't quite dropped down below 10%. Just stall on the squares for a while. So I can actually get these guys demoted. Oh, they demoted right away. Cool. Robots can't generate crime, right? Nope. They cannot. That being said, the synth has actual labor to do. We should have actually waited a day to do that, since the robots were slightly increasing science output, which is on the second day of the month, by improving stability, but whatever. Because they're producing more minis they consumed. At least most of the robots working the farms. I prefer they work the farms instead of the mines, because mining jobs have lower base output, and so for a given number of minerals you have relatively more energy upkeep, and low habitability pops working them just makes that worse. There's more overhead in mines than farms, basically. And you can often trade food profitably with other empires and not so much minerals. So I guess actually it probably would be better if they were in the mines, wouldn't it? Anyways, I got more uni than I thought it would from raising living standards, and resistance to fruit will definitely come. Nice and early. In fact, so early that we delay planetary unification by 6 months. That would only delay 3. Not 1. Anything that's not guaranteed will just no longer be available and be wasted, but I guess I could try and grab xenolinguistics. 447 progress a month. This needs like 1800. Still some. Yeah, it's about to go up to 5 months if my empire size gets much bigger. Yeah, I'll grab xenolinguistics. I think I now drop my influence enough that I can get the full benefit and none of it go to waste. Although, if I did another first contact first, it would save me some science. Enough time has passed and I still haven't started first contact. I'm getting worried that another empire could, if I roll poorly, translate my language first, so boom. Xenolinguistics. That'll take 4 months. Planetary unification, 3 more. That's 7 months.